331 million Americans. Thank you, Chairwoman Granger and Ranking Member DeLauro. Those Americans are depending on us to save their lives. If we do not vote today, we will cause the loss of life. We did not vote for the supplemental that the president sent over almost a year ago to deal with the southern border, and lives have been lost. But as a Texan, I will not accept your challenge that I want people to die. Absolutely not. And that this constitutional right of the power of the purse is one that I have used recklessly. They have used it responsibly, and the budget numbers of whether it's Nancy Pelosi or the negotiators are responsible for helping the 331 million Americans. In my state, your state, you will not pay 172,000 active duty soldiers when we don't pass this today. The Small Business Administration will stop handling $2 billion in loans. There will be no reentry programs for those who are trying to get their life straight. We will eliminate the funding for our public schools, the Department of Education, in things like early education and the feeding program. We will stop 176,000 people from flying through airports because you will not be able to fund aspects of Homeland Security. 786,000 people would lose their access to the Women and Infant Program, which I understand is one of those that are being attacked. You are causing the loss of life. And I will not stand here and accept that challenge. You are my friends. We work together, but your arguments are false. The responsibility of the power of the purse is to be responsible. And so 168,000 federal workers who do vital work will be lost if we do not proceed. It is important that food and drug is able to be funded, that housing is able to be funded, that the Department of Agriculture is able to be funded. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, as I close, we must be responsible. 331 million people want us to fight for them, and we're going to win this fight and pass this and avoid a government shutdown. I yield back. Thank you.
Amendment from the gentleman from North Carolina.
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, having listened to the debate, I don't believe agreeing to this amendment would enhance the prospects for the bill. I think it would, in fact, go the other way because people would be concerned about the presidency and the vice presidency. I just don't think it adds anything, and certainly not when the proponents of it are saying that they don't intend to support the bill anyway, unless it's a totally different bill, which is outside the. Which is beyond the scope of the hearing. And so I'll oppose the amendment.
Would the gentleman yield?
I will.
That's not what I said.
I'll claim my time back. What you said was, because I asked you directly, if I supported this amendment and it were agreed to, would you support the bill? And you said no, not unless it also included the all other, not just First Amendment subject matter, but all constitutional rights, which the chairman's already ruled was out of order because it expands the scope of the bill as drafted.
May I be heard?
I'll yield to you, but I'm not going to disagree. Well, go ahead. Yes, sir.
I mean. Okay, yeah, as I stated at the time, yeah, they took down the ranking member's amendment on germaneness grounds.
Right.
I asked my colleague from North Carolina, he could still accept it as an amendment to the bill, as a friendly amendment. And with respect to the vice president and president piece, I appreciate the eloquent statements about the importance of the First Amendment and the free market of ideas. I share all of those. But this is actually not in contradiction to that. In fact, neither of these amendments would be in contradiction to that. They would actually support the concerns that you
let me reclaim. You're well beyond the scope of what you asked to respond to. And let me just use the rest of the time available to say, the gentleman, I certainly associate myself with the context, historical context added, and the eloquent comments by the gentleman from California. They actually, at a very much deeper level, indicated to me just how far we've seen this go back. I've heard the chairman tell stories in private about what it was like to be here when the scandal broke of Lois, what's her name again? Lerner, and the targeting of conservatives because they were conservatives, and there was never any accountability for it. She came in and you saw the recalcitrant commissioner of the IRS thumbing his nose at Congress over a period of time, and it's sort of got a ragtag bunch in Congress trying to ferret these things out and present them to the American people, but they've gone on and on and on. And anybody who has been in favor of applying 1983 to all federal officers under these multiple Bivens Acts multiple times, who wouldn't say, I'm going to quibble over and I'm not going to support this bill because because it only addresses the most important rights we have, those secured by the First Amendment of the Constitution. Well, we'll let you stand on your hypocrisy.
Gentlemen,
yes, I yield to the chairman.
I was just going to add, it's not just conservatives who've been targeted as well. That's what we need to keep in mind. I think the gentleman from North Dakota pointed this out. The gentleman from California outlined it so well. But it's been folks in Black Lives Matter. It's been all kinds of people who've been censored and targeted. We want the First Amendment to be the First Amendment, and the only way you protect the right, as Mr. McClintock said, is to have that remedy. That's what this bill does on the most important liberties we have, the ones articulated in the First Amendment to the Constitution. I yield back.
Absolutely right. And to echo the point made from the gentleman from North Dakota, in this particular situation, you're not going to see a criminal proceeding at hand which can be defended on the predicate that there's a violation of other federal constitutional rights like the Fourth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. Here, you're just going to have federal officials, usually acting furtively and secretively, like Lois Lerner, like the FBI Foreign Influence Task Force, engaged in this, and you see the result of it obtained, and millions of Americans, not just the people that posted, by the way, millions of Americans, including those millions of Americans who had millions upon millions of Americans who had their right to receive information impaired in violation of the First Amendment. All of that needs to be responded to. And anyone who would say, well, I'm going to sit around and wait for my bill, that says a lot. And so I think it's unnecessary. It's a great bill, clearer now that I've heard smarter people than me address it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
Just very quickly, this bill is not a politicized bill. This is specific to the First Amendment and protecting all of those rights, whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, left or right. This applies to everyone. In terms of adding the president and the vice president, I think that we have seen the weaponization of the courts for political reasons against a former president. And I think that if you were to add president and vice president to this bill, it would be used to cripple all future presidencies. And I think that that's very clear by the fact, Mr. Ivey, that you continue to focus on the statements of an individual in a position of power rather than on the effort or the action of depriving someone of their First Amendment rights. So I'm not focusing on the statement of a politician who may stand up on a stage and make a hyperbolic statement. What I'm worried about is the universities prohibiting students from speaking because they have a disfavored position. It's not about the statement of the president or the vice president. It is about the action of the bureaucrats and the unelected individuals who are depriving people of their First Amendment rights. That's what this bill is directed to. And I don't have any further time, and I...
well, you do, but would you yield the...
Gentlelady yields back. Someone will yield. Someone else is going to yield. Gentlelady from North Carolina will yield to the gentleman from Maryland.
Yes, I will. Thank you very much.
I mean, just quickly, I mean, I didn't offer an amendment that said Democrat or Republican. It says president or vice president. And as much as I might want the presidency to always remain in the hands of the Democrats, I know that's not likely to happen. So to say it's a politicized amendment, I think it, goes beyond the plain language of the amendment that's offered. And with respect to the examples that you just offered, like the universities, and I think the cases, I'm just thinking out loud on these cases, but I don't recall any of them being federal institutions. So I don't know that this would apply to those scenarios that you mentioned. But at the end of the day, president making a hyperbolic statement, depending on what it is is the biggest bully pulpit for potentially implicating an individual's First Amendment rights. There's no two ways about that. And I'm not pointing at any particular president. Y'all look like you're assuming I'm talking about one in particular, and you might be right. But you know, it's important here to remember that the impact of what a president can have by the statements that are made from the public platform can be overwhelming, especially in the age now of the retaliatory trolling and the like. That you want to talk about impacting individuals' First Amendment rights, you know, you start getting death threats and have to hire bodyguards. That certainly has an impact too, and we can talk about some of those cases if you want. But then with respect to just the final point, and then I can yield back. I think it's important too, back to my colleague from North Carolina's comment about the German soldier. This wouldn't just implicate public statements. This would implicate, as someone said, the furtive discussion where the president gives a backroom order directing someone to take a step that would, under the provisions of this amendment, deprive someone of their First Amendment rights. So I hear your arguments. I don't think they're actually applicable to the amendment that I offered, and I continue to encourage my colleagues to support this. And with that, I yield back to the gentlelady from North Carolina.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The question occurs on the amendment from
Shh! I'm a deep state secret operator. Oh shite! Oh shite! I'm a deep state secret operator. Deep in psych. Deep in psych. I'm a secret deep state operator. Oh no.